Yeah.
Hey, welcome to another Workshop 88 Maker Night. This is Tuesday, December 2nd, 2020. We're closing out the new year with some more interesting projects. We've got some interesting ice molds we're gonna try and unmold later. We'll see. And Phil has got an update on the satellite. Second time I've done that on the weather balloon chasing project, and we've got some other interesting projects. So let's just jump right in and get started. Hey, Phil, you want to take it away?
Yeah, sure. So let's see. I liked your comment the other day in this image you posted on Slack of a fox hunt of a different kind. Just as sort of a refresher from last week, I got started on this from another YouTube channel, and they had mentioned a couple other websites that had that would plot radio sounds in their paths, and so that led me to this site. And then they've got.
We're not seeing your screen if you're intending to
oh,
be.
Shoot! Here's the fox hunt of a different kind. Okay, and then so this is the site I got started with, and yeah, this little help tab over here, and it's got a link to their GitHub Project Horus, and this is actually the site live right now. This yellow path here was the most recently launched radio sound from Davenport, and let's see, these two are from last night and this morning. But anyway, so I went to the GitHub, and that's Project Chorus, automatic radio sound receiver utilities. It's pretty good. They've got a decent amount of documentation. It's basically just following directions. You need to get the right type of RTL SDR dongle, and they have a link to get they mention here a receiver with the temperature compensated oscillators mandatory, and that's definitely true. And there's it's pretty well documented what you need to do. Just follow along, and then there are some other things. It's not just this one thing that you have to download and install. So I have mine set up on a Raspberry Pi 3, and let's see. So there's a couple things that aren't on here, but they do mention, like they mention configuration and whatnot, and then on the configuration it talks about calibration. Okay, well, with the calibration, that means you have to go to some other GitHub page and download and build that one. It's not installable directly. And anyway, long short of it, so here's the specific RTL SDR dongle that I got, and RTL-SDR.com. You can get these from Amazon. Here's the temperature compensated oscillator. So I did have previously I had a different dongle that did have the right chipset, but did not have the temperature compensated oscillator, so it was not working. And then on their website, they do have one of the pages they have is a tutorial on weather balloon radio sound data, and they have some links to some other software you can download. A couple examples of some antennas. And I find it's since you're just receiving, the antenna doesn't seem to be critical. And I'll give an example of that later. You know, I do think that the antenna I have right now, I have one similar to this quarter wave ground plane, and I do think it makes a little bit of difference, but it's not critical. You don't need to have the right antenna for this. So here's my setup once I got the right dongle and my quarter wave ground plane antenna set up in the attic. And I put it in the attic for two reasons. One, I have some aluminum siding on my house. So if I really want to get a good signal, I have to go outside or up in the attic. But then the other thing too is that it's good to be up high for the antenna to be up high. And for this frequency, we're at approximately 403 megahertz plus or minus. For this frequency, you want line of sight. So the higher up you are, the better. Let's see. So, let's see. So here is running from that Raspberry Pi in the attic. It does look similar to their main website because it's using the same map data, OpenStreetMap. And so here's this little symbol here indicates my station. If you go to the main website, see I'm right here. And if you click on here, here's my call sign and which version of the software I'm running. There's this other station here over in Dixon, Illinois. And I like this person simply because they are my early warning signal. They are much closer to the locally in the Chicago area. The radiosondes, the weather balloons, are launched from Davenport Municipal Airport. And so this station picks them up a lot faster than I do. So that gives me a chance to see what frequency it is. If you look over here, there's some information here. It gives you the frequency in megahertz, or at least as it's measured by him. And then I don't know if you noticed this. There's not all weather balloons record much data. The ones coming out of Davenport are only doing location and speed and direction. They're just tracking the wind in the upper atmosphere. So the temperature readings are always absolute zero, and the relative humidity is -1%. But some other, just a brief aside. Let's see, it doesn't show up here. Let's see.
Phil, I have a question.
Yeah.
So talking about the other one in Dixon, is there a way that you can communicate with that other one, or can it send you an alert to your station to know when it came by, or you have to be looking at the map?
Not that I know of. You can configure your own personal setup that I mean, you don't have to sit and watch it. You can have it set to send out an email notification when it detects something. I thought this was interesting. I've never seen this before. I don't know what, I'll have to look at the data later, but I don't know if this was amateur release or what, but this one over here in Michigan I picked up somehow. And that's 253 kilometers away. But I mentioned that one just because it did have a temperature reading. And I don't know if this relative humidity reading is right. I think that seems awfully low, 0.4%. Anyway, sorry for the brief aside, but
at that altitude, I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, that's true. Over 28,000 meters. So the other thing you see here is what your. I'm not picking up anything right at the moment. This is that's the age of the data here. It's old. So the last time I detected it, it was over here. I went back on the main site. It had traveled further along, and this is the last point at which this station was able to track it. So anyway, you can see which frequencies are being picked up by this frequency scan. I have found you can also put once it detects peaks, it'll start running another routine. I don't know if you saw that. It just said detected peaks on 7 frequencies. Now it's going to go through and try to analyze those peaks and see if it's getting an actual signal. I frequently get these several peaks here. They're noise. This peak here, as well as this one over here, I know are noise, and I do have them blacklisted. I can probably do the same with these. And then this one over here is gray listed. I know it's a good frequency, but I still like it to go through the scans because I'm not sure that that's the only frequency that I'm going to be looking at. But you can do, if you know specifically which frequencies are of interest, you can whitelist them, and then it will only spend time looking at the frequencies of interest. So once I put up, so the first couple runs I had some, let's see, I have this little antenna set that came with it. You can make a little dipole, and it's not the right frequency, but I was able to pick up some stuff still. That's one of the reasons I say the antenna is not too critical. But so I got some data from that, and then I put in this better antenna, and I was getting even better data. And I could then, so as it records, it also makes a log, and you can open up those logs, and you can import them to Google Earth. So here is Google Earth. Here's the Davenport Municipal Airport where the weather balloons are launched. Here's that other station. That's my personal early warning system, unbeknownst to that person. There are a couple other stations in the Chicago suburbs, but this one in Dixon is helpful for me. And so here I am over in Naperville. And so with my better antenna, this is recorded from my base station here in Naperville, and I got this set of data, and this was pretty interesting that I was getting so this point on the ground here is the predicted landing site, and we go back here, you'll see it's kind of hard to see on this, like here, you see there's this little bullseye spot here. These are the predicted touchdown sites. You generally don't see anybody track all the way to the landing site because it drops below the horizon and then they lose signal. But so once I had my good antenna, I was pretty excited that I think this one goes down to 1,000 meters or so. Wait, this is yeah, so 1,800 meters altitude, and this is about 200 meters elevation, so 1,600 meters above the earth. And I was just really excited that I was getting so close to the estimated site. Made me feel pretty confident that if I was closer with a mobile station, that I could actually track down to the ground. And so there was that was this set of data. And then I had another set that was good. And this one, not quite as close, but still, it seemed like I was tracking pretty well. And that if, gosh darn it, if I were closer, I probably would have tracked it all the way to the ground. And then one more. This one pretty good as well. And so then that was Saturday morning, the blue set. Like, you know what? I've got most of what I need. I suppose one thing is that you could take your base station and take it and be mobile with that. But since I have mine up in the attic, it's kind of inconvenient. So I put together a second one. I had already thought of this ahead of time. I had already purchased a second dongle. And I had also ordered a GPS dongle, which arrived early, conveniently enough. And so I started putting together a mobile station. And one of the things that is one of the tools that's available is also another website where you can do predictions. So they grab the, forget exactly where they get the data from, But there's a computer model that models the wind data, and it's accessible to the public. And so they download it, and they have some sort of software, another bit of software to download and install. And so you enter, for the prediction, you enter the start location, latitude and longitude, the launch time. Launch times are regular on universal time zone every 11 a.m. and p.m. So locally here, that's right now, that's every 5 a.m. and 5 p.m. from Davenport. There's a launch. You enter an ascent rate and a burst altitude and a descent rate. By default, they have 5 meters per second for both of these, and they have 30,000 meters. Defaults are pretty good, but I was just playing around here. This is a prediction I ran earlier before our meeting, before this balloon was launched, this yellow one. And so they had it landing, I think, a little bit more directly north of Peoria than it finally is predicted to. But you know, it's reasonably close. And so on Saturday, I was saying, okay, well, where's the Saturday evening balloon going to land? And it was right around here. And I'm like, okay, well, I got my stuff ready. You know, I'll show you my setup in a little bit. I managed to get everything together, felt prepared well enough. I also spent a little bit of, put a little thought into it. I'm like, okay, I'm not going to be watching the screen while driving. I'm going to go there and sort of prepare myself and camp out until, you know, hopefully get there early and then start tracking it at the location, and then I'll be ready. And that plan worked out pretty well. I did get there early enough. I ended my first run, so there were some glitches. Some things were not working. So when I set out, I looked at the map. I found out that, okay, there's a Walmart Supercenter. I'll set my car's GPS for the Walmart Supercenter in Ottawa. Got there, parked in the parking lot, start looking at my setup. And there were a few things to fix that were not working. One, the tracking wasn't running, so I had to. Not sure. I still haven't figured out what went wrong there, but I did get it back up and running. As soon as I got it running, I was picking up a signal, and then I was. Then it looked like I still had some time, and I don't know if things went different than the prediction or if I just lost track of the minutes. But then, oh shoot, it's about to land. And so set the GPS on my car for the latitude and longitude of where it was predicted, and took off to try to track it down. Let me go into, so the Project Horus also has on their GitHub, they have, let's see, there it is. They also have a called Chase Mapper. It's a chase map. The developer is in Adelaide, Australia, so I guess this is one of his chases. And again, just a little bit more stuff to download, build, install, etc. Still, it's pretty well documented. He does make a comment about here about how he doesn't necessarily consider it well documented, but it is pretty good. So it's basically just following directions. And there are a couple things where you have to go over to some other GitHub and download something else. You have to do that, and for instance, to get the weather data for predictions. Because one of the nice things about this is that when you get this set up, it works offline. So even if you go chasing after a radio sound and you end up losing a data connection, then you're still okay because this will run without data. So it'll store locally. You can store the weather data, and then it can do the predictions locally. You can also download and store map data using Foxtrot GPS. And then so you have the cached maps, the cached weather data. it's just using the radio then to find the radio sound, and then that ends up looking something like this. You would also see a little representation of the car. It has some settings. I have not figured this out yet. Some bearing indicators telling you which direction to go. See, I don't think this is from earlier. It also gives you a countdown, you know, the estimated time to land. And so there's a lot of cool stuff here, and it's neat how they set it up so that you can be prepared. As long as you're prepared, you can run offline. I had a couple things that I didn't set up correctly, so it didn't work 100% right. But anyway, so this is quickly what I had set up. One of the dipole antennas that came with my dongle, I installed on the windshield. Here's the setup in the passenger seat, and this is the pandemic time, so I have some hand sanitizer, some masks. Anyway, here's the Pi, and running off a power bank. The dongle is off to the left here. This cable going up here goes to the GPS dongle. I've got this little screen and a little wireless keyboard, and a lot of cables. This is not my ideal setup, but it worked. So I got there. This is I took a little picture of the screen when I got there. So this is basically where I was parked in the Walmart parking lot. And so I got there. I still had almost a half hour before it was predicted to land. And so then this is the data that my base station was recording. Oops. And so I was over here in Ottawa. And then once I got my mobile setup running, you can see there's a little bit of overlap here. It started picking up the signal. And then, and so it recorded the signal all the way up until here. And I didn't have this data in Google Earth available with me because I was in the car. I didn't have my laptop. Didn't have the, you know. So, but then after I got home, there's right here, this spot. Now, granted, there's some uncertainty with GPS itself, but so at least with this spot that it said, there's 400 data points here. There's 400 data points, meaning they're about 30 seconds apart. So there was this significant portion. I did look through the velocity data in the log too. So this is really actually where it landed. I tracked it all the way down to the ground. I don't know for sure that this was the right spot. I mean, maybe it was a little bit over here or over here, but I was able to track it down to the ground. So that was pretty exciting.
Hey,
I had low expectations when I was doing this because it was after sunset already. I did drive over here. I think I parked like over here and got out and started looking around. I did not find anything. I looked around for 10 minutes, but you can see it's kind of close to this house here, this farmhouse over here. I didn't want to spook them walking around with a flashlight or something. So after a few minutes, I gave up, and I didn't even realize that I had tracked it all the way to the ground. So I wasn't quite so confident I was that close, really. So, but anyway, it was still a lot of fun, even though I didn't find one this time. It was a lot of fun to check out the system and see how it worked. Also got the next morning, from the 5 a.m. release the next day, the best data set so far. Pretty complete set from about as far west as I can get it once it pops up over the horizon for me. And again, went pretty close. I'm surprised that my base station is able to track that close to the ground. This is like 1 degree above the horizon. So my little antenna seems to be doing pretty well. So that's where I'm at. Now I've got some bugs to work out of my mobile tracking station. And now I just got to find time when when things are right, and I can find there's going to be use the predictor and see where it's going to, one that's going to land relatively close by. Peoria is a little too far. And then it's during the daylight. I don't think I'm going to do after dark anymore. And so we'll see. Winter's coming, so that might decrease. That might decrease the number of chances of having a good time to go out and chase them. But
Is your mobile antenna directional?
no, the mobile antenna I have right now is it's just this dipole here.
Yeah.
But I you know, it would be interesting to have too. Just it wouldn't be. I don't know. I'm not sure how I feel about mixed directional antennas at this point. I have mixed feelings.
Well, that guy, your early warning guy, it was interesting that he has a Yagi that's pointed southwest.
Oh yeah,
And they go out of view for him so soon.
yeah.
So I mean, and that would be, I don't know. I'm just.
Well, yeah, I find that interesting. So it's not just that one. Let's see. So yeah, 3-element Yagi pointing southwest. There's another station that's not showing up right now in Frankfurt, and that person lists their antenna. It's a purchased one. They even had the model. It's a 7-element Yagi used typically by for doing work with satellites. And so again, it's a directional antenna. How so? This guy says he's pointing southwest, but then this is one of the reasons I was saying early on that that I don't think the antenna is too critical, because a lot of these radio sounds will go north of him, or they'll even end up being northeast, and he's still able to track them. So
He's probably interested in seeing them when they take. He's probably pointing at where they take off. And
probably.
Then
Yeah.
once they're up in the air and closer to him, then the direction doesn't matter as much.
That could be. And yeah, I would like to take my my setup and let's see, and take my antenna and move it up even like another three or 4 feet. Doesn't make a huge difference, but I do kind of want to get to a point where GPS uncertainty is the only uncertainty that's really dominant. That everything else I'm getting, yeah, I'm getting able to track as low as you know, go down on the horizon and with best range, and I don't know, get all the things I have control over tweaked. And since I don't really have control over GPS itself, have that be the only uncertainty. But yeah, it's kind of funny when I was looking at that data at the end where it's on the ground. It's, I'll have to do something. I've been working on a little Python script to post-process the logs, but click on one of these data points, and it says altitude of about 175 meters. Well, the elevation there is 205 meters. So it gives you an indication of, gives you an idea of some of the uncertainty with GPS. And based on this, it's 30 meters below ground.
30 meters isn't bad.
Yeah, don't just bring a flashlight, bring a shovel too.
Yeah, well, I mean, assuming it's above ground. I can't wait till you bring one of those in. How often do they transmit?
So they launch twice a day. It's let's see, let me zoom out a little bit here. They get launched twice a day at the same time.
No,
all
I mean the transponders, do they announce every second or continuous carrier or?
Oh, so I think they are just continuously transmitting.
Makes it easier.
Or let's see, the way the software works on scanning. It will scan. Let's see if we have in the logs here. Maybe not. I don't know, but this thing is working roughly every. Once it starts tracking it, it's working every 30 seconds. So when you go through and you look at the log, let me see if I got. Oh yeah, I do. Let's see. So if we look at the timestamps here, these are showing up every second. I thought it was every 30 seconds, but well, yeah, pretty much continuously, or practically continuously.
That's great.
So I had a couple of questions.
Yeah, sure.
So I'm just curious, like what these things look like or how big they are. It seems like they're like, you know, how bad is it if it falls on somebody's head?
They are small, and there's another website. I think it's called Overlook Horizon, and he's got a bunch of advice on launching your own balloons. And there are, at least in the U.S., there are regulations. I'm sure there's everywhere there's regulations, but he lists the regulations for here, and there are size limitations as well as weight limitations, and so they're pretty small. Let's see. Somewhere I thought I saw a. Oh, I know where it is. So the ones that are launched locally are made by Lockheed Martin, and there we go. So I'm not sure what he's got there. That's not the radio sun, actually, or maybe that's something off of. That's actually, I think, something off in the distance. It looks like it's under the string, but I think that's behind him. This little thing right here. So it's looks like it's a little bit bigger than his fist, but that's about the size of it. And then that's connected to a parachute, and then the parachute's connected to the balloon. I think they do. There's variations. There's several different types out there, but this is the one that's launched from Davenport. And I think some of them have a way to burst the balloon intentionally if they want to. These are just they're just bursting once they get up to a certain pressure. But
What
yeah.
Is there something that disconnects the balloon from the parachute when it bursts? It seems like the.
Oh no, actually, let's see. There was the YouTube channel I was watching where he goes out and he picks one up. This was over in Switzerland. Similar thing though, and the shreds of latex from the balloon were still attached to the end.
Oh, okay. And I'm also curious if you have a feel for like how many people are looking for these things. I'm just wondering, like, if you go out to this field and search for one, are you likely to be the only person, or are there likely to be dozens of people?
I think you're likely to be the only person. I mean, so if you look in at least, so here's the main website. Now you do not have to give your station location if you don't want to. Even You don't have to upload your data, so you could make one of these and just keep your data all to yourself. But if you look at the number of stations reporting in the US versus what's over in Europe, it's pretty crazy over here. I mean, here there's so many stations, I wouldn't be surprised if you in Belgium bump into somebody, but in the US at least, there's not that many. Like in our area, there's this one, Dixon. Oh, here's one of the other stations up near Wheaton, I think. Here's the call sign. And there's another one, doesn't always show up, but it's in Frankfurt.
Those are the people that you're going to meet in the cornfield.
I think so, yeah. Also fun is on the Chase Mapper. You can or cannot, it's up to you. You can display your car on the public map if you want people to track you. Oh, that was something I forgot to mention. So I was using the mobile version of the website, and I made a mistake. So there is a full screen mode, and I did not realize that, and I didn't enter full screen mode. So after I had started driving, at a certain point, of course, my screen on my phone just turned black and my phone locked. So I wasn't showing my location anymore. But then I found out later that that was one of the things I was getting distracted with when I should have been getting ready to go try to catch the balloon. That if you go into full screen mode, your screen stays on, and then well, the other thing too is that I didn't have that good of a signal either once I was out by Ottawa. You know, once you get out of the major metro areas, if you're significantly far from the highway, you don't really have any cell signal. So that's one of the reasons it's good to have the cached map tiles and the downloaded weather data for the mobile station.
I thought it'd be funny if you saw one of these things, if you recorded it land and sit still for a few hours, and then all of a sudden it starts moving at ground level again. Be able to follow one of your friends all the way back to one of those antennas.
Yeah, I'm not sure. So I mean, they're battery powered. I'm not sure how long the life of the battery is, but you know, the ones that I've been tracking from home, I lose sight of them, so I lose the signal that way. But yeah, I am curious at what point do they stop broadcasting, because the one that I tracked to the ground, well, it kept broadcasting for a while. There's over 400 data points of it on the ground.
So out of curiosity, Phil, is it are they labeled such that you can just drop them in a mailbox and they'll go back to NOAA, or finders keepers, or do they actually say?
So yeah, on the there is on their website, on the Lockheed Martin website, they have this thing here, found a radio sound, learn what to do if you find one. And there's this little PDF note here. They say that you're free to keep it. They have small lithium battery cells. There's also there might be instructions, not necessarily. It says, because it says here, if you don't want to keep it and there are no instructions for returning it, please dispose of in accordance with your local guidelines, etc. So there might be instructions for returning it. There might not be. I don't know.
Okay, so it's kind of, they're not real concerned about getting them back.
No, they do say you are free to keep them. So
out of curiosity, what do you think the BOM is on something like this? You think it's like probably a $20 worth of parts, or?
I'm curious. You know, there's not too much in it, I don't think. I mean, it's a small device. But if it's being made by Lockheed Martin, I figure they're using quality parts. You know,
they're charging their customers, the government.
Well, of course, there's 100% markup, but
Yeah, so he's already paid for it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's got a good point there. Yeah. Yeah. Right. And you know, the other thing is you got look at a little parachute for your model rocket, you know, sidekick thing going on.
Yeah, it'd be. I'm curious what's inside of it. Also curious. So Andreas Spies, the YouTuber with the Swiss accent. I don't know if you know his channel, but he's the bit. It was his channel, his video that I was watching. This was posted recently. That got me. I had not that I had never thought of doing this before, but this one kind of inspired me to do something now. And so he went out and he actually he picked one up, and he opens it up, does a little bit of a teardown. I don't remember the details of the teardown, and I don't know if that's the same model. There's, like I said, there's a few different models that get used. This is just one of them. There's also some. So many of them do transmit on about 403 megahertz. There's some others that are much higher frequency, like something roughly 1.6 gigahertz frequency. So yeah.
I also noticed, I'm curious if you have any idea why. I also noticed that there was like a squadron of balloons over some of the military space in like Arizona. I mean, it was literally like, you know, there's like one in Kansas, there's one in Michigan, and then there's like 4 or 5 of these things released in Arizona when I happened to be watching this map. Do you have any idea
Okay.
what's going on there?
No idea. I mean, so there's nothing. I mean, so there is. I don't have the link handy, but I did find while I was poking around and searching information on this, I found a map of listed national weather. I think you can even just go to National Weather Service and you find the info there too. So they have regular locations like Davenport across the country that are releasing the radio sounds twice a day. But other people release them too for different reasons. And what's going on in Arizona, I don't know. I mean, for example, I wouldn't be surprised if, like near Cape Canaveral, if they were launching radio sounds more often than somewhere else, just because they're going to do a launch or something. I don't know. But and then people do launch them just as hobbyists. There's a protocol to follow. You do have to get clearance with the FAA, I think, or at least you're supposed to get clearance with the FAA, letting them know you're going to do the launch and whatnot. And you're supposed to wait to get an approval before you actually launch. That was one of the things here. So there was this one in Michigan. I have never seen one in Michigan before, and it's got a very different ID number that I have not seen before. Usually the ones coming from Davenport start with LMS6, which is the type of radio sound. This one starts with IMET. Also interesting, I don't know if you were here earlier when I was talking about this one, but this one actually had humidity data.
No, I think I missed that. See, right there, exactly what does that mean when I see a parachute instead of a balloon icon?
So the parachute is after it's burst. So if go here, this is not very obvious, but there's this little squiggle. I don't know if you can see it on your screen. It's hard to see, but there is this little squiggle mark here, and that marks where the burst occurs. And initially, you'll see the balloon after it starts to descend. Then you'll see the little parachute symbol instead.
Okay. And the last question I had, I noticed that every once in a while the temperature seemed to be unbelievably cold. Was that, you think, an error in reporting? It was like
No, it's So if there's no temperature recording, you'll see absolute 0 or
Oh,
minus
okay.
273.
Yeah, 273. I was sitting there
Yeah.
going, wait a minute, this number sounds familiar, right?
With a minus 1% relative humidity. Yeah.
Yeah, it's almost like, are you carrying on a physics experiment up at altitude? Yeah, if we peruse, I take none of these have pressure sensors on them, even if you like looked around for one.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure these are at least this model is just doing GPS data.
Hmm.
That's what it seems like. And you get location, you get altitude, you get velocity, you get heading, but that's all GPS stuff. There's no temperature data, there's no pressure, humidity, or anything else.
Okay.
Yep. Let's see. So like this one over here, one of the other things it logs is battery voltage. One has a battery voltage, but usually the ones I'm tracking do not.
Oh,
One of the things I do want to modify. So this is the little local website for your own station. And it's displaying the azimuth and elevation. Well, I'd like to log that data, but it doesn't show up in the log. I kind of like to modify the code a little bit so I can log that too.
cool. Thank you.
Anything else?
All right, thanks, Phil.
Sure.
Jim, did you want to share yours next, or do you want to look at some ice? What do you want to do?
Can certainly look at some ice because that's right there.
All right,
Or I can go whatever you.
Let's start with ice because it may not. I may need to like do some preparation, and then we may need to wait a little while. So, all right. So, so what I've been working on is creating clear ice and ice molds, and I want to share these with you. So here are a couple that I printed, and they've been in the freezer since Sunday. And then here's some that have been in the freezer since yesterday. Here's some more. Let me see. The camera's reversed, so I'm sorry. And here's a couple more. So I think all in all, we've got 8 molds. These that were in the Stanley containers, they were not insulated at all. I put them in the freezer, and that was it. Just put them in, and as a result, you get some white ice. This one was slow and directionally froze using the cooler as an insulator, so it froze from the top down. And I'm really happy with the results, and a little afraid to try and break those out of the water. So we'll try that. I have a tub of warm water, and I'm going to try and break them out. But there's a few things that I want to show and share that I also thought were interesting. So this, if you see inside here, this is just an open top cube form, and this is a ring ice cube. And but you could see these patterns of the white that we're trying to avoid with the other ice method. But I think those are due to the cycles of the freezer, and I'm not exactly sure what principle is involved, but I thought that was pretty fascinating that you would get these sort of concentric ridges or rings. They look better in person in stereo, but you kind of get a good idea. So another interesting thing was, even though these weren't in the freezer as long as the other ones, see if you can see, this one fractured all the way across between the 2 molds. So I'm really interested to just throw this into the water. I've had these out in just room temperature air now for about an hour for the duration of the call so far. And this one only fractured a little bit, and I think with a little influence, it'll just pop apart. So I had another idea that did not work out. I had bundled these straws in there, and the idea was that, okay, how do I know when it's frozen halfway through? Because you can't see how much of this water is frozen clear and how much is still water. Well, unless you could see the bubbles in there, which we can now. And so I put these straws in, thinking that I could pull one out and I would have an indicator of how much ice had frozen, but they've thawed since I've been in the house. What actually happened was the, here, let me minimize this other window, was that the ice, the water actually under the pressure of the ice pushed up and froze out the top. So I did not have a good meter of how deep the ice was. Also, they're not removable. They've become part of the block of ice. So let me put this camera up. We'll have a look, and I'm open to suggestions for how to remove these. Let me sort of set up my cooking show camera. I also mentioned to the crowd earlier, I've got a few tools here, you know, a hammer and all. And I was really happy that I own exactly one ice pick or awl, and I was able to find it. So we've got that handy. I want to get these open top ones out first and see if I can't float the ice out. Oh, it was also interesting that this mold, they were both floating in here when I put them in the freezer. At some point, the square mold sunk and got beneath the rounder mold. I think that may be a result of, oh, it came out nice. Let's have a look at that. That may have been a result of the fan in the freezer kicking on and moving things around. So let me give you a look at what that looks like from the side. And so this is not slow freezing other than having just a larger container. Oh yeah, look at that. Interesting. So, and this is warm water. Let me just drop that in there for a moment. We'll see. Let's actually get all these in there.
And now it's less warm water.
Oh, it's going to be much less warm water. I have another tub over there. And before it gets too cold, I'm going to scoop a little water. I've moved my computer out of the way here. I'm just going to pour some in here so that I could lift that out. So who votes for hacking at it with the hammer or the awl to bust it open? Maybe I'll move it away.
I'm giving it a couple good whacks with the hammer first.
Yeah, Scott votes for the hammer.
Oh, it made some suction-y sounds. All right, so now you could see one of the molds. I'll drop that in there, and maybe just, hopefully we're not fracturing the ice inside the mold.
What are the little red things sticking out of the mold?
I will show you. They're what hold the mold halves together. So I would like to find a way so that I don't have to hand cleave all of the ice before my cocktail party. But this is not bad. So you can see there's the mold. And these, get a pair of pliers. Because everyone has pliers handy in the kitchen, right? These are little 3D printed clips. Oh yeah, that's the way. That hold the mold closed.
You're a little off camera.
I'm very excited. Thank you. Always kind words from the director. And the halves are firmly together. I suppose I should use my awl. Oh. All right, I'm a little disappointed that we've got some white ice in there, but that is beautiful. Very promising result. I'll give this a quick dip in the water. Little twist. It's nice. All right, let's
Right.
real quick. Let's have a look at how this looks in a glass. Maybe with a little.
Put a little bourbon in there too.
Oh, you don't say. So Joanne was just down to help me out with my concoction. And I have to say that I'm very happy with this. I'll give this a try in a moment. Let's look at some of these other molds because they're all just soaking here. And these, I already see a problem that, like, maybe I'll print these again with solid areas. So these were printed with no voids. They're solid plastic. So there's nothing that would keep them floating. It'd be nice if they floated, because then they wouldn't be sunk in the ice. Okay, this piece wasn't meant to come off. No, thanks. So I think the ring mold needs a little more work. I'll set that aside. So I don't know. Oh, you know what? I wasn't supposed to get that one. Was supposed to be have a little white in it. So that wasn't one of the slow ones. These are the slow ones. So let's try and get. Holy smokes! You know, I'm noticing the volume of water and the volume of my containers is not equal. Let's get these out, and then we'll see what we can do. Oh, all right, yeah. I'll talk more about the molds in a minute. Very wet mouse net. I'm going to pull these out just so they don't get too melted in a moment. So you can see this has been in the freezer since Sunday. The other ones froze all the way through. And if I slosh it around, you can see there's water trapped inside. So let's find out how far it did freeze. I don't want to break my molds. And you could see these two. So what do you think? More whacking with the hammer?
Seems to work.
All right.
More hammer. More hammer.
More whacking.
I have no idea what that ice is going to do to the electronics that it shoots off into the lab here, but we'll see. Oh, I see why they use these picks. I think that might be a lost art. Yeah, that's definitely a good way to go. This is a very Stone Age feeling thing. I hope this audio isn't too obnoxious with the pounding.
Am I the only one that's thinking about the Monty Python scene where they're building that giant wooden rabbit off scene? I guess so.
Not the only one.
Okay.
The which Monty Python scene?
The Holy Grail. You see like a wide shot. You don't see anything, and there's a lot of sawing and hammering, and next thing you know, they're rooting this giant rabbit onto the field. It'd be awesome if you pop one of these things open like a frozen rabbit inside.
Might smell funny. This is a weird, well, I've been working on this project for over a week. The OpenSCAD for these molds, it takes 38 minutes to render. And 3D printing, of course, is no fast process either. So there's a certain amount of excitement for me to demold these. Hope I don't do anything stupid and break them, but I'm very excited about what we might find in here. So the design of the mold, I hope I'm not too off camera, I'm noticing that. The design of the mold is two-part. There's a vent in the top and a vent in the bottom to allow water in and air out. And then the legs that hold it elevated and the clips on the top are all 3D printed, and they hold it together. Oh, I have to say that the ice is working very well in that drink. So let's see. This is one of the ones I was really looking forward to. I hope this turned out. Oh. You getting any of that?
Looks like a diamond.
Yeah, it's a brilliant cut diamond. It's exactly what it is. It's also stuck in the mold. See, it almost immediately lost its features when I dunked it to get it released. So let's see. That's a little sad, actually. Maybe I could pry it out. So I was concerned that the 3D printing, the temperature of the awl is going right into it. And I got to be careful because it's going to want to break. Maybe this one isn't the best.
And you hold it in the warm water so that only the bottom is yeah.
That's an idea. Thank you. If anyone else has any other ideas, this is all open and free experimentation. Oh, a little twist on the mold. So the next question about this is, how do you think it will float? How will the balance between buoyancy? Boy, we didn't get pure clarity on this one. You can see that there's a little pitting in there, a little white. Maybe if I was a little more careful with the water.
Only a 3.5 on the clarity.
Yeah, well, thank you. I think that's generous. This would be fun to have in a cocktail. So now let's see how it floats. And it floats round side up. Which, well, that's upside down now. So it floats multiple ways. So that's like a tumbling iceberg. Boy, it really rounded. Still, that'd be fun to have in a cocktail at a party or something. So I forget who it was who asked me if I planned to make lenses. They're probably on this call. All right, let's see what else we have. So I created spheres with 4 levels of faceting and a dodecahedra and an icosahedron. They're both hedrons. And of course the square. Oh, the square popped out while we weren't looking. So unfortunately we lost some form there. I think that mold also could use a little draw. If it had a little draw, I think it would have popped out a little easier. It's another one I wouldn't be too ashamed to have in my drink. Although I do prefer my Scotch neat. Am I allowed to say that on the show? I will say these 3D printed molds are holding up to hammering pretty well. So this is a sphere in OpenSCAD with a facet of index of 8. If you wanted to see how those clips, You can see how I 3D printed those clips and they hold the mold together. But what's interesting too, I use that figure of speech a lot, is that the script uses a function I rarely use called, what's it called? Oh, this is going to come out easy. The Minkowski sum, where I could take any shape and I basically use a second shape, which is a small faceted sphere, and I use that to make that shape larger by a given radius. And then I subtract the original shape from it, and that will make a mold of uniform thickness out of any shape. Now, it would be useful if it had a draw, so you can get it out of the mold. Kind of neat. I bet this technique would do well. And this was one of the molds that was not in the clear ice cooler. So let's have a look at the one remaining one.
How did you fill those 2-piece molds?
So the mold has a channel at the top and a channel at the bottom, or vice versa. And when you put the little legs on it and you stand it up in the water, they just fill. So you don't pre-fill them. They start off full of air. You get them in there, and then you tap on them, and all the bubbles come out. And when you move them up and down, the water will actually squirt out of the top due to the pressure. So, all right, we'll do this dodecahedron, and that'll be the last one. Oh, this one completely thawed in there. You know, this one's easy. So,
Are there any geographic marks so that you can tell the orientation and which side of them has the white ice?
no, only the two that were in the cooler shouldn't have the white ice. They should have been slowly cooled. And this mold is a faceted sphere. I think $FN. The facet number is 32, so it's almost spherical. You can see I think for all intents and purposes, it's spherical. A little oblong. I should check my printer dimensions, and this one was it's an eyeball. This one was in one of the molds that was not in the cooler.
Have you seen the ads for the I think it's the LG freezer that claims to make clear ice balls? I don't know anything about it, but I see those ads popping up all the time.
I haven't seen it. I think the ring's a lost cause. I left it in the water too long. This is the last one. I want to see this. Hey, the straws came out. And the concept was that I'd be able to know how much ice was in there, but everything's getting wet in here. And that can't be too good on your ears. Let me try the ice pick.
Actually, not too bad.
Not too bad. What about a welder's hammer for breaking slag off? It's got kind of a sharp hard thing to hit with.
Do I have a sharp hammer? I don't think so. I think the closest I have is a hatchet.
Maybe sometimes they do the ice sculptures with a chainsaw.
Let me go get my chainsaw. Yeah, so another bit of thinking here is that if I had the cooler completely jammed full of these shapes, I wouldn't have so much of this banging to do. They would come out a little easier. So my monitor's getting wet. thank you all for joining me on this journey. I think I may make some other changes to the molds, minor changes, then I'll probably put them on Thingiverse. With a link to this video, of course, which just shows just how easy that it is for you too to have clear ice shapes. This one is being a little difficult, I think, just by virtue of how big that chunk of ice was. Come on. I feel like it's just a couple big good whacks away from fully parting. Although I don't like spraying ice all over my lab here. Oof. I tried freezing ice molds in super chilled brine and in boiling water and double boiling water and using distilled water. All of the things that you read on the internet that don't work. And this was the first method that really showed promise. I'm still encouraged by it, though. Like I said, this particular part of the process is could be streamlined. It's a, what do they say, optimization vector. Oop, I did break one of those. These are the easiest things to print, though.
Yeah, how many of those would you need for a party?
I'm thinking that the chunks go into the cooler
I'm
for
already having a party.
your unsophisticated friends that only drink beer, and then you save the good ice for the cocktails.
There you go. See, I like the way we think. My. Yeah. So this well-formed dodecahedron still does have bubbles, and I mean it's interesting, but it's not clear. Huh.
Oh, it's not perfect, but it still looks a lot nicer than what you typically get.
Yeah, and I do think, yes, we can get them out of the mold, but it is it's kind of hard to get it out of a 3D printed mold. I do think that there's a big factor in this, in the layer lines. There we go. There. That's crisp. I like that.
Yeah.
All right.
Could you use TPU for something like this?
Yes. That's a good suggestion.
I was also wondering if you could do, 3D print molds to then use the molds to make some silicone,
Oh yeah.
and then use the silicone molds for the ice.
Yeah, I was afraid too that the PETG would delaminate and come off in the ice, which doesn't appear to have happened. Creating the planes necessary for these parting lines was it was a lot of fun. You know, that this group can appreciate the kind of fun that is. Not everyone would find that fun, but there's one more sphere, but I'll leave that to your imagination. I think you could imagine what's inside, and we can move on. Thanks again for joining me.
Thanks. That's awesome.
Great, that's cool.
Cool.
Now I got to go have a cocktail.
All right. What's next?
Jim,
Jim.
I can do that. Okay, so this is a,
Yo, mute.
I unmuted. Okay,
Oh,
try again. So this is a hack to a UPS. I had an old UPS that somebody that came from work, they were being decommissioned, and that ran for a very long time. And to keep the critical stuff like my computer and internet connection and my home monitoring system up, the the UPS has two, great big honking, bigger than a car battery lead acid cells. So that UPS met a sad fate. Construction worker plugged a Sawzall into it and blew it out. So I got a new thing. This is a cyber power something. It admits that it's likely to be sitting on the ground, and so the LCD, kind of pops out and gives you a little better view. It's just, I don't know, it's 900 watts or something. Nothing too special. But I'm interested in getting some information to my home monitoring system, and so we needed some modifications. I guess the first one, I really wanted to know how much current my whatever stuff is on here was drawing, so I could get, maybe optimize that. And this one actually is smart enough that it will tell you power in watts, and that would have done. But I did add a piece of number 14 wire in series with the battery backed outlets, so I can actually measure how much current. So that's nice. That was mildly interesting. But the data is what I'm really kind of looking at. So the back's got a bunch of outlets that are powered by the UPS. Behind this black gaffer's tape is another bunch of outlets that are not powered by the battery. They're conditioned, but if the power goes out, those lose power, and that's, not what I'm looking for. So at the top here is the more interesting stuff. It's got a USB port, and it talks to some management software that you can show on your PC. Unfortunately, this lives. It's not going to focus. This lives someplace that I can't get a USB connection to, and that's not going to do me any good anyway, because that's not where I want the data. I want it in my home monitoring system. Now, the encouraging part was this. You might think, oh, that's a DB9. That's going to be an RS-232 serial port because it says serial on it, and you would be wrong. I can't believe that they abuse this like this. It is RS-232 levels, but all that's there's I think 2 handshake lines. One reflects whether it has lost power, and the other reflects whether the batteries are low. But they only put out a voltage if you have something connected to them, providing, I don't know what, RTS or something. So you've got to put DC voltage in before these will even give you, a level out. And it's not a dry contact. It's, there's some smarts in there. So, and this was, there from some earlier exploration trying to get one of those signals. And okay, yeah, maybe I can source, voltage into there, and that would give me the most critical information. But the interesting place is this that used to have a little plate on it, and they sell a card that plugs into this for 160 bucks or something that has Ethernet connection. And the trouble is I don't want this thing on my Ethernet. I want it on my other home automation network. So in this hole, I don't know if I can get light, there's an edge connector. And so whatever card they provide that plugs into this thing plugs in there. And well, what's on that connector? Well, they CyberPower, of course, doesn't tell you anything like that. Fortunately, there was a guy, Jeff Mays, who reverse engineered this and found out what was on there. And it turns out that on that connector, there's power, 12 volts or something, and ground, obviously. There is serial data, and maybe a little bit more. And so they plug, something in here that takes that data and makes it available on Ethernet. Well, that wasn't going to do me any good. But to do anything, I got to get in there. I got to get a connection. And I don't know if you can see, there's slots here where a PCB would kind of fit in. So I made up. So I need connection to that. So I made up, just took a piece of double-sided copper clad and made a connection for it. Now it turns out this is tapered, so it was kind of hand fitted into there. And this it's being good, slides in. So I now actually have connection to that. The connector turns out to be 1/10 inch. I stuck something back there to try to measure it, but I don't know if I can get the light just right. So right up at the tip, you can see scratch marks where the electrical contacts in that edge connector touch this thing. Using that, I just used a Dremel to isolate the copper clad to essentially make fingers and make an edge connector. And obviously same kind of thing on the other side. So this guy very conveniently wrote out the pinout, showed the pinout of this connector, and it's got, I've written pin numbers on there in Sharpie, and said, well, here's what they are and here's what they connect to. And that was really nice. I really appreciate his work. And he was wrong. He mirrored the pinout. So that's why there's solder on the outside too over here. And of course that didn't work very well. And so I went back and, guessed that maybe he'd done it backwards. Now the guy also had circuit boards made up for this with a Max 232, an inverter chip, TTL to RS-232, and it inverts, which is an interesting story. And so he made a commercial thing that is kind of this size, and it's got a DB9 that actually is RS-232 out the other end. And so this looking at his board and which pins he was using gave me a clue that maybe he had just gotten these things backwards. So cool. And I'll talk a little bit about his strange stuff. So now I've got access to, and what I really wanted, I was trying to use this serial port. I just, give me a couple of bits out that I can connect to my my home monitoring stuff, but I can't get anything out of this without power. Well, yeah, he said 12 volts, maybe I see 10 volts or something. So I took, there's a red wire here, and that was his 12 volts, and patched it into this serial thing. And sure enough, when I provide power, and now all just from this thing itself, I can get logic levels, or maybe RS-232 levels, but I can get a voltage out that I can put on an opto isolator and connect to my stuff. So that was really cool. But gee, there's serial in there. Maybe that would be useful too. So I brought all the wires out, brought a serial pair and power and ground. And this is, I made up, Scott will like this because he does this silly thing of putting surface mount stuff on a soldered onto a proto board.
It's not silly. It's perfectly good.
So I have this perfectly good piece of proto board with a couple of opto isolators, one going each direction, and even surface mount resistors, because this happened to be what I had in the drawer. And let's see. No, the step before that, this serial that comes out, I just connected that to a DB9. And the guy said, well, what comes out of here is logic levels, but it's 0 and 5 volts, and that's close enough to work on an RS-232 interface. RS-232 is voltage levels. And so he said, yeah, if you just take these, just take the data lines, which is this orange and white twisted pair, and ground, and run that into a serial receiver, it'll work, an RS-232 serial receiver. And it did. Okay, well, that's cool. And it's really strange because his board has this Max 232 chip on it, which is a TTL to RS-232 converter. And he said, look, man, you can take this pair and it works fine, but if you want to be anal about it and you want to actually have official RS-232 levels, yeah, here you can, populate this chip, and it's got charge pumps on it, and it'll do plus and minus 6 volts or something, valid RS-232 levels. But how does that work? Because the output of this clearly works on an RS-232 input, but the Max 232 is an inverter, and TTL serial, logic level serial, is inverted from RS-232 levels. RS-232 idles at a negative voltage, and TTL serial idles at a high voltage. And how could it even ever possibly work? And it turns out that the Max 232 chip has 4 channels of inverter, and he used 2 of them to re-invert the signal. He just didn't tell anybody about that. So that was kind of interesting. So I took the opportunity to take this stuff, drive my opto isolators, and out of that, now I have actual TTL levels, and put this into whatever it took. And sure enough, it's an interactive protocol on the serial line. And if you type a D character, a capital D, and a return, you get, I don't know, 20 bytes of data or something. So this is a work in progress. I have gotten up to the point that I can hook this up to an Arduino, and sure enough, so this is what's the one with the 32U4, Leonardo Pro Micro. So I've still got a USB connection, and the serial port talks TTL serial. So I can actually talk into this and type a D, and it goes through the opto isolators, and this whole side is out of the camera. That whole side is opto isolated from whatever's going on there. So I can actually get data out of it. And that's what I really wanted. I think now this, I don't need, because if I implement it this way, I can actually get, more data. It's got voltage in and voltage out, and frequency, and some information about the battery. Now this won't know much about the battery because it's got a couple of 12-volt sealed lead acid in it, but it's going to have huge batteries that will last much, much longer. So it doesn't know how long the batteries will last. So the information I'll get out of this isn't completely right. But well, hell, if all I need is an Arduino and a couple of opto isolators, I've got a reasonable amount of real estate on this board, and I bet you I can put everything I need on that board or on a newer one. This is a typical node for my home automation network. My stuff is all Cat5. It is not Ethernet. It's RS-485, and so this is typical. I don't know what it was for. Nano generic I2C. Yeah, so there's an I2C connection here and a couple of other wires for something. So this is just a pro. It's a nano, I guess, because it's got a USB port, and this plugs on my RS-485 net. Well, yeah, I can probably lay something out to get this much hardware onto this board, and then I'll have an RJ45 sticking out the end that actually will talk to my stuff and will be opto isolated. Like, the critical thing about opto isolators is that you got to have power on the receiving side, but my network gives 12 volts or 9 volts or something, so I'll have power on my side. I can receive from the opto isolator, and this thing has got 12 volts or something, so it can receive my opto isolated commands going in, and so that should work. It's famous last words, and it's work in progress, and I'll let you know if I blow anything up, but there is some serious hope. But just interesting that they have that connector. They don't tell you nothing about it, but another hacker who had reverse engineered it and documented it almost correctly, made the information available so that, oh yeah, well, I can do that. So that was kind of cool. So this is my work in progress.
Hey, did that person provide you with the protocol, the meaning of those 20 bytes, or how to talk to it and what they mean?
It's ASCII. So yes. And
what can you tell it to do then?
You can tell it the power cycle. You can't control the outlets individually. They're just all bussed together. So you can shut it down. You can ask it stuff. There might be a temperature thing in it. Let me see if oh,
that's cool.
This is that opto isolator. There's nothing to it. It's just kind of one going each direction. See if not those. See if I have a line of. Oh, I have a line of the data. So these are pictures of it and scope traces of trying to figure out what the logic levels were. But someplace here, so that red line, that is the data you get out. It starts with a hash sign. That's a start.
We see the ping, the Arduino UPS optocoupler.
Really?
Yes, sir.
So if I stop share and start share and pick a different and pick the screen that I actually wanted to show. Thank you very much.
Yeah, that's better.
So the input voltage is 128. The output voltage is 0 because it's turned off when I took this. I don't know what that is. The battery 100% probably. The V, this is cool. This is actually going to save me some work, because one of the things I wanted my home monitoring stuff to do was know the battery voltage of my big honking batteries. Well, they've actually got it, and they tell me this. That was part of what made made me say, hey, the serial stuff will do the job. So, thank you very much, CyberPower, whoever you are, for giving me the battery voltage. Frequency, H, I don't know. Runtime, so this is the number of minutes it thinks it will run at the current load. I don't know what C is. I plugged a lamp into it, and this Q gave me like maybe watts of power being used. I'm not sure about that. And some other stuff. And out here, there's some bit fields, and he did give a decoding of the bit status fields. So that's the stuff.
Nice. Whenever I get something like that going, I always think I should look for more of those on the surplus market.
Yeah, this was just, regular commercial stuff. I had my main breaker panel replaced, and so the power was out to the house, and the electricians were there, and I had a generator that was powering my old UPS, and they're construction guys, and I said, here, if you want to plug a battery charger in, and construction guys carry battery chargers and spare batteries for whatever system they do, and so I hauled it over, and it plugged his charger in, and that was cool. And then he decided that he needed a 110 Sawzall, and saw that, and he didn't know what my connections were. He could have run his Sawzall off my generator if he plugged it in the right place, but he plugged it in the back of the UPS, and the UPS never went on battery ever again after that. Well, that's
Sorry for your loss.
yeah.
Yeah.
So that's what I got.
Did the smoke come out? The magic?
No, in fact, it didn't. And it still would condition, if there was power going into the old Topaz UPS, it'd get power out. And it would charge the battery. It just wouldn't ever run off the battery. And then when I took it apart, I didn't see any smoky residues or,
I always smell the board. I always try and see if I can't find it with my nose.
Well,
Yeah.
maybe it was just a lot of noise from something like that, and the voltage spikes, and one little voltage spike blew something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, possible. That old one was a sine. This one is also a sine wave, but the old one reconstituted a sine wave from battery, full time, unless the batteries were dead, I guess. So yeah, it's actually a power conditioner as well as. And I think this one is too. It's got a ferroresonant transformer to take care of small voltage variations, and it's got a spike protector too. That's why there were a couple of RJ45s on the back that you could provide surge protection for your network. So yeah, I don't know, maybe it was a spike. Whatever it was justification for buying a cute new UPS.
Did you ever get your 7 amps through your water pipe fixed?
Yeah. The guy said, oh, here, I'll fix that. I will be in code, and I'll just not bond the neutral from your box to the water pipe. I'll bond it to whatever's in code for an outside ground rod. And he put a ground rod in, and he ran a fat green wire to it. So there's no more current going through my water pipes because he disconnected it and connected it to a ground rod. So now the imbalance goes someplace else. I could even tell it was the difference current between the two phases. If I put a clamp on my water pipe and look, and it'd be running, an amp. And then I'd turn on a space heater on one phase, a 120 space heater, and that would drastically change the imbalance between the two phases. And then I get 5 amps on my water pipe. It was completely clear that I just had a bad neutral.
That's hot water.
Yeah. Hot, right?
Sorry.
So, and I had him I had him tighten all the neutral connections. He had to pull the meter to, you know, work safely and stuff. And I said, just please, for me, just tighten everything. And he did. So maybe that fixed it, and maybe there's no current going through his ground rod, but there's nothing going through my water pipes anymore.
I had an experience that was similar. I called up Con Ed and they fixed it.
I called them and they didn't fix it.
Oh, well, you know, I told them, I measured the voltage on the two hots to neutral, and they were a little bit different. I told them what the voltages were. It's like 100, 15 and 120, something like that. And the guy came out and he had the most impressive power load I've ever seen. It was like suitcase size. It looked heavy. I was looking forward, for him to clamp it on and warm up the whole backyard practically. He pulled off the power meter. He looked inside and he realized that whoever attached it to the house, the bolts were loose. They were absolutely loose. He tightened them down and the voltage difference went away. And he never connected the load. I told him I was a little disappointed. He said, well, those are the breaks. But my experience was that whoever connected the Con Ed to the house where it's bolted down, bolts were absolutely loose on one side. It's just somebody forgot to finish off the job. So I don't know. I'm just saying, if it's behind the electric meter, I don't know if the electrician is going to pull that apart. But that's where my problem was.
I had a big screen TV. So one morning, I don't want to say it started, but it came to a head. One morning, Joanne and I were sitting having coffee, and the toaster in the kitchen exploded. Literally, sparks and fire flew out of it. I went into the worst tirade with KitchenAid. It had nothing to do with them. We lost a big screen TV, an Xbox 360, the power supply, and DVD player, a VCR. It turns out, we didn't know what was going on. It turns out that all of my grounds, all of my neutrals were loose in the box. My neighbor works for ComEd. He came over. He just and he was in my breaker box live with a screwdriver, just smiling at me. I'm like, dude, you're making me crazy. But we haven't had a problem since. What was happening, and there's scorch marks in the box, is that if the neutrals are loose, you get arc over from each phase. So your appliances all of a sudden see 220. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I was on mute. Wow.
Yeah, I'm glad the house didn't burn down. We just got new things.
Except for the VCR.
I caught that, Jim.
Yeah, the VCR was a loss.
So did you want to go for another 10 minutes and Peter can go over his mailbox thing?
Oh, sure.
Yeah, I don't know how long we want to go. I was going to try to keep it pretty quick, but it might be tough to keep it to 10 minutes, but we can start and see how it goes.
Okay, well, you can just be the last.
I've got time. I'm
topic.
interested. We could.
Okay.
Hope we're not keeping you up, Gail.
Go ahead, Peter.
You're muted, Peter.
Peter, are you muted?
Or
the mailbox speaks.
Peter, you're muted.
Yes, I'm.
We heard you for a second.
Yeah, I can't figure out how to unmute while sharing my screen. So let's. So now that I'm unmuted, let's try again.
It's probably what happened to me too.
So what I was saying was I was trying to take Scott's instructions to heart and not spend a whole bunch of time putting this together. So basically, I just put together some links that that talk about some of the key topics that I use or some of the key concepts. And I was just going to like mention those very briefly and talk about how they get put together. And then if people are interested, they can ask questions later or follow up with the links later or whatever. But I thought this was kind of an interesting way to show how some of these various technologies are tied together to solve an actual problem, or assuming that you see this as a problem. So this is my mailbox, and what it does is whenever the mailbox is opened, it sends a signal to let me know that the mailbox has been opened and presumably that the mail has arrived. So most of the good stuff is in this box, and let's talk about what's in the box. And one of the things is an ESP8266, namely the Wemos D1 Pro. And the main reason I picked that is because it has the let's see, yeah, well, I can't point at it with my mouse very well, but it has the connector for an external antenna. And a lot of the 8266 boards don't have that. So if you look back at the mailbox, it's got an external antenna, which I needed to get the range to connect up to the Wi-Fi in the house. And another question is how do you power this thing? Well, let's see, there's a couple aspects to that, but mainly there's a battery inside one of those little USB 18650 based power banks is inside there. And the first iteration I used for this, this is a magnetic reed switch, and I just hooked it up so that when the mailbox door was open, the thing powered up and it was just connected to power. And when the mailbox was closed, it would shut down the power. And that worked about 4 out of 5 times, but it takes about 3 or 4 seconds for this thing to boot up, connect to the Wi-Fi, send out the MQTT message, and shut down. And about 1 out of 5 times, the mailman would be too quick, and he would open the door and put the mail in and shut the door before it could get the message out. So my next iteration, I use one of these little gadgets from Adafruit. And this is cute. What it does is you connect power to one side and your device to the other side. And when you push the button, or you can hook up a contact closure, it will start supplying power to your device, and it will continue to supply power as long as your device holds this particular signal high or low. I forget what it is, but basically you push this button or open the mailbox, it will power up as long as it needs to connect to Wi-Fi, send out the MQTT message, and then shut itself down until the next time that the mailbox is opened. So let's see.
That was clever.
Yeah, that is nice. Do you get a confirmation with MQTT?
No. Well, actually, I believe they have different quality of service levels, and I believe there is a quality of service level where you can get a confirmation, but I don't do that. It is TCP, so I figure as long as the broker is up and listening, it's pretty reliable. I suppose there's things that could go wrong, but if the broker's down, then your whole home automation system is down anyway. So I thought I would just mention this because it might be of interest to people. They have another, Adafruit has another module. If I can get to it, it keeps hiding on my screen here. They have another module, which is a similar thing, except it can power up based on a timer. So you can adjust this potentiometer and get the thing to power up like every few seconds or every few minutes or every few hours, depending on what you set this at. And so that could be useful if you have an application where you want to wake up every few minutes and send a temperature reading and then pull the plug and power yourself down again until the next time. That might possibly be of interest to people.
Huh, that's cool too.
So, okay, so the other piece of it was the first iteration just had the battery in it. And that worked pretty well because this thing uses almost no power. I mean, it's once a day, it's on for a couple seconds. So I thought I could just put this battery in and run this battery forever. But it seems like when it's out in the weather and sitting out there for months at a time, I was only getting 2 or 3 months out of a charge. So every 2 or 3 months, I had to open it up and charge up the battery and then put it back in, and that got old. So the next iteration was adding the solar panel, so that as long as I have sun every few days, I can keep the battery charged, and it's just a USB based solar panel.
Was that angled bit on the top of your post based on latitude?
No, that was already there. Let's see. Oh, there we go. Now I can move this. Yeah. So yeah, that just happened to be, the post just happened to be cut off to a reasonable angle because it is pointing more or less south and more or less angled up, but it's not terribly critical because, like I say, I don't need to get too much power out of it, just enough to keep the battery charged. And another thing that I kind of lucked onto is I didn't realize at the time that a lot of those USB power banks don't allow you to charge and discharge at the same time. A lot of them, when you're charging, they will disconnect the output power. And I actually had to try 2 or 3 power banks before I found one that worked. But I thought it was just, oh, some work and some don't. I've come to learn that this is actually kind of rare. Very few power banks actually have what they call the pass-through charging that lets you power something without shutting down the powered device. And so I found this link, which lists the particular RAV Power is one company that actually makes power banks that have this pass-through technology. And then just when I was preparing for this talk, excuse me, I happened to find this one on Amazon, which claims, I haven't actually used this device, but they claim that they have the pass-through power capabilities. So if I ever have to redo this, I might try this one. That's another thing is that the manufacturers of these power banks usually don't bother to tell you whether or not they have pass-through power, and usually that means they don't have pass-through power.
Well, weren't you just using a raw 18650 when you started? And obviously,
no, I was actually using a power bank like this, because what it would do is, the way these power banks work is they have a built-in power switch, so they draw no current until they see a load, and then they power the load for a while, and then they shut themselves down. And so I was using that feature that I used that reed switch to connect my device to the power bank. The power bank would start providing 5 volts. Everything would be fine. But then as soon as they close the mailbox door, then it would disconnect the device.
And how did you find this one, or how would one find?
So that's the key, is looking. Most people call it this pass-through power, pass-through technology, pass-through power. Here they talk about pass-through power. So that's you probably have to go and search for one that specifically mentions that. So this probably has other applications too. If you're ever wanting to use a power bank as basically a UPS, you could maybe even use it to power a Raspberry Pi or something like that, and you're wanting to use it as UPS, you have to have something that can take AC in one side and power the Pi on the other side, but still do both of those things at the same time. So you need to look for that pass-through power. So that's actually probably most interesting stuff, because some of the other stuff we've talked about before, that when the thing powers up, it just sends out an MQTT message. And I could go into a little more detail about what MQTT is, but we've talked about that at some of the previous meetings. Basically, probably one of the key things is that you have to run this broker on some sort of server in the center of the system. The clients are all pretty much dead simple. So the MQTT client software will run on something very small like an Arduino or an 8266 or something like that, and all the heavy lifting is done by the broker. So I have the Mosquito broker running on the same Raspberry Pi that runs the Home Assistant, and then I have Home Assistant with some rules that talk about how to deal with those MQTT messages. And then the other piece of it is what happens when these MQTT messages come in. So the way what I have it set up is that I have a bunch of automation rules defined in Home Assistant that know how to deal with these messages. So here's some examples of the automation rules that I have for Home Assistant. So what happens is when I get an MQTT message where the topic is home mailbox and the payload is on, actually all I do is Home Assistant has this concept of Boolean variables, and all I do is turn this Boolean variable on. There are other ways to do it, but I wanted this worked out well for me because I wanted to tie things, have actions take place when that Boolean gets turned on and when that Boolean gets turned off. So this is where the fun stuff happens. So this is when this is another automation rule that says when the state of a Boolean variable changes to on, we're going to take some actions, and those actions are send a message to my phone using XMPP, which is basically Google Hangouts. So I get a notification on my phone. This is something which I actually don't use anymore, but I used at one point. It's another web-based notification system so basically it'll pop up a notification on my phone using this push bullet application to say the mail has arrived. I publish an MQTT message, which goes to a part of the home automation system that listens for MQTT messages. And in particular, it listens for a topic of home speaker all, so that it will speak these words, "You have mail," on all the speakers in the house, namely one upstairs and one downstairs, to say "You have mail." And there's an RGB light in one of the rooms, which did I lose the value? There's another line here missing. There's a light that in the living room that turns green when the mail has arrived. So I guess I didn't put it in here. So yeah, so when the mail arrives, the speaker says "You have mail," the light turns green, and then it stays like that until you go and get the mail. So what happens when you go and get the mail? Well, what I do there is I have an Amazon dash button, which I don't know if people are familiar with Amazon dash buttons, but I have one of these on my desk and one of these on my wife's desk, so that after we go and get the mail, you press this button, and that sends out an MQTT message, and that causes the Boolean variable to turn off, and then the green light turns off, and everything's good until the next day. And
did you hack the dash button to do that?
Yes. So that's the other piece of this.
He gets Clorox wipes every time he gets the mail.
So I don't know if people are familiar with these buttons or what you can do. When they first came out, they were a very popular hacking target because people figured out how to use them for this purpose. Basically, when you press the button, it connects to your Wi-Fi and gets a DHCP address and then sends off a message to Amazon to order the product. But if you can set this up so that what you would do is you would go through the setup process up to the point where you're specifying the product that you want to order, and then you stop the setup process. So from that point on, anytime you press the button, the device will connect to your Wi-Fi, get a DHCP address, and then not do anything. So what you can do is you can watch for those DHCP messages, and whenever you see your device requesting the DHCP, you know that dash button was pressed. And so that's people were doing all kinds of things. They would just, you know, any place where you need to stick a button somewhere, you could stick one of these dash buttons, and every time you press it, it would send out a message. So I was using these, and it was working just fine, like many people were doing, until Amazon discontinued their dash buttons. And so let's see. I guess it was the link where I was just at here. So back a few years ago, February of 2019, Amazon announced that they were discontinuing the service. And therefore, all these tricks you were using, like going through their setup process to program your button to not order anything, didn't work anymore. And everybody who was using these dash buttons and had an investment in this process thought they were out of luck. But this other guy did just an amazing job of reverse engineering. It's truly amazing. Actually, he didn't do it. This guy, Chris, didn't do the hard work. He actually did. There's a link to it down here. Somebody in Germany did the really hard work of figuring out the protocol that these buttons use to connect back to the Amazon mothership, and he hooked up to the JTAG port, I think, to disassemble the code and figure out what these things are running. But he eventually, here's the guy in Germany that did all this work. And then this guy, Chris, figured out how to, at least for some of these buttons, they had two versions, and this hack only works for the first version. So only some of my version buttons could be rescued this way. But what you do is he gives you a WAV file, and you play this WAV file through the dash button speaker, and it executes a buffer overrun attack on the dash button to execute this new code and override the part where it would normally talk to the Amazon web server and set up your SSID and your Wi-Fi SSID and password. So by going through that hack, I was able to rescue some of my dash buttons and continue to use them this way, even after Amazon no longer supported them. There is one other way to do it. I still have it on my screen here, I thought. Let's see, I guess I didn't put the link up yet. Amazon actually makes a button which is they actually sell it to be used for this purpose of controlling, having it control, link up to the cloud and control whatever you want. The problem is these cost, at least at the time, I think they still cost around $20. And back in the day, when Amazon was first selling those buttons, they cost $5, and they came with $5 in Amazon credit. So basically, so at least, and they didn't always sell them for that price, I guess. But for some, when they first came out, you could get these buttons basically for free if you use the hack, whereas it costs $20 more if you buy their special buttons. But at least this is an option if you want to try to do something the right way these days. That's another option that's available.
So what did the button do for you?
I mean, couldn't you just have like an ESP01 where you press a button and it sends an MQTT message?
Yeah, so you could. The nice thing about this is this is a very self-contained package that doesn't need any kind of power supply.
Right. It's a commercial sort of put
Yeah.
together button.
So,
I get that. That's good. Yeah.
You don't have to build anything, and the big thing was is not needing power. So if you want to just stick one on your bedside table or stick one on your desk, you don't have to plug it into an outlet. You don't have to worry about charging a battery.
What did they have in there?
Actually, yeah, I shouldn't speak too strongly about that. It's got a well,
2032.
It's got a pretty powerful processor. Let's see if did I lose my link there? I guess I lost my link. This guy talks about what's in there. It's a pretty powerful processor.
Yeah, it was ARM, right?
Yeah,
Wow.
I guess this guy doesn't necessarily talk about it, but thought there might be a picture of the insides of it too. It does use a AAA battery, and that battery runs down after a year or two, depending on how many times you press the button. So I've had to crack them open and replace those batteries, but that's a fairly infrequent thing.
But they weren't officially designed to have a replaceable battery?
Correct. Although they are in a socket. So if you can crack the case open, which is a little bit tricky, you can just pop in a new AAA battery.
I bet Scott could do that with his hammer.
I found my ice pick too.
So that's kind of the whirlwind tour, but also pretty much what I wanted to say. So
You're my hero, man. I've been wanting to automate my mailbox exactly the way you've done it. I mean, and you've gone over the top, like way beyond what I had planned for so long. And if you get these links to me or one of us, we'll make sure to include them all on the
yeah, this is
agenda.
This is a Google Doc file, so I can send you the link to this file.
Yeah, super. Thank you.
And I've been wanting to automate mine too. Mine's in the house, so I can connect it to my network, but I haven't been able to figure a reasonable way to get a switch on. But yeah, the wanting to know when the mail comes, that's a real thing.
Ooh, that's a good Slack conversation, Jim. There's all kinds of ways to get that switch closure.
Wish I can't find it quickly enough. When I gave a talk similar to this once before, and there was at the time I had given it, like just a month or so before, the IEEE Spectrum magazine, they always have some, the last page, they always have some kind of retro electronics thing. What they had a link to like an 1880 remote mailbox. It had it triggered a buzzer when you opened the door, but this was like an antique mailbox that had a remote notification system. So maybe if I can find that picture, I'll post the link.
That's great. We've got thermostats we can set from our phones, and now we're getting light timers, exterior and on the house light timers that we can set from our phones. I just hope that whole setting from your phones thing continues to work.
Actually, just very briefly, I was going to show just talking about all the things you can integrate. One of the things I like about Home Assistant is that it has so many things already. It already has platform support built in for just all kinds of different things. So it knows about things like Chromecast devices. It knows about things like my thermostats for the upstairs and downstairs furnaces. It knows about open weather map, weather services.
And is this administered on your own network or in the cloud?
Yes. Yeah, this all runs on the Raspberry Pi on my home network.
I really like that.
So I've got the links to Home Assistant here.
Yeah, even if it's like, even if you're not concerned about the security, there's the, one of the things that always bugs me is some of these cloud services that if you buy into it and then a couple of years later, they go belly up or.
You know, like a dash button.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But this is an open source project. It's very well supported at the moment. They come out with updates about once a week, almost too often. But it's all Python based, open source. So, you know, someone else could always take over if the need ever arose.
It's great.
All right, I guess I can stop sharing now.
Well, thanks for the details, Peter.
Yeah, I
Cool.
say I love talking about this, and I can provide any more detail on any of the topics if people are interested.
So
thanks for the link for the rescue your Amazon dash buttons, because I've got one and I never activated it, and then I saw the thing about them being discontinued, and so maybe I can actually make use of it.
Yeah, you'll have to check and see whether it's a version 1 or version 2. If you got it recently, if you got it toward the end of the process, it's likely a version 2, which may mean you're out of luck, but you can give it a try.
I thought it was amazing to see that it was playing audio into the audio interface to generate a buffer overrun that would trigger a mem copy. I was really reading that link while you had it on the screen. I was like, oh, that's brilliant. I love that stuff.
The that link where it says Hans did the original work, that's a link to a talk he gave at some HackerCon. And if you're interested in this stuff, it was just amazing to see what he had to do to hook up the test equipment and trace through the code and figure out how to get access to the code that wasn't really accessible. And
well, I did read that when they made the dash buttons, they did put a whole bunch of debugging or testing pads on the boards, which included a JTAG header. So like once you have JTAG, that's a whole other world.
I think that's what he tied into. But
that's how I hacked my scope. I had to bust that open and access the JTAG header, dump the ARM program, and then apply a brilliant piece of software someone else wrote to unlock its features. But I'm sure I'll have other questions, but I'll catch you on Slack.
All right.
So I even one more small topic. I just noticing the audience that's here. My dad's Ender Pro arrived today. It sounds like Peter's new one arrived recently, and Andrew has one, and Carl can't be too far behind. So we need to sort of collaborate to share our slicer settings and whatever tips are helpful for Octoprint or whatever we set up.
I'm all for that. I will be happy to share my Cura slicer settings and the things that I know about how I use Cura for that. I would be really, I mean, I have not set up an Octoprint for any of my 3D printers, so that'd be something that we should do in a future thing. And I mean, Octoprint is general for general enough for all printers, but yeah, that'd be cool.
There are some tricky parts about it. Gail can attest when we were especially when we were setting up the whatever the Octocam or whatever the capture stuff. There,
Oh, yeah.
getting your printer set up is there's details.
Trial and error.
Yeah. The initial bit is easy, but yeah, I suspect there are rough times ahead.
Yeah, well, I'd be all for that too. I don't know how quickly I'll be able to get into it, but it looks like a pretty big project to get it all set up and working properly and so on. But I think if we can all share experience and advice, that sounds great.
You know, the 3D printers at Workshop 88, their configuration is all stored on in Workshop 88's GitHub. Their configurations are Prusa Slicer or Slicer PE, but there's no reason we couldn't add other settings or other projects to the repo. So that's cool.
It's a great idea.
Are you gonna wrap it up or are you gonna do one more?
Oh, I don't think I've got one more in me. We've been going a while. I love this. I could probably go another 30 minutes, but not if I'm the one talking.
Rick is next.
Is Rick on? I think he got bumped.
Rick's gone.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just need another cocktail, Scott.
You don't have to ask me twice. I put the extra ice cubes in the freezer, so I got 4 out of 8, and I found my ice pick. So, well, Andrew, do you want to take us out?
Sure. Thank you all for tuning in, and as always, hit us up on Patreon, and like, subscribe, ring the bell, do all the things, and thank you for being a part of Workshop 88 in whatever form you are. So thanks.